You're on.
Did everybody sign
Yeah.
the second sheet? I don't think Chris, I don't think you got, oh, you did sign the second sheet,
Oh,
Chris?
no,
Yep.
he needs to sign.
I did.
Chris needs it.
It's a really messy handwriting one.
So, okay, so I'm Mindy, I know everybody, but I don't think I've ever met you. Have we met?
Renee, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. My hands are free.
Rich.
So are you, is this your first
Yep,
year?
nice to meet you. Yes, first year.
Okay, you guys are jumping ahead, I was gonna do introductions, but you're jumping
Oh,
ahead.
sorry. We can do it again.
It's okay. Do you know if you're gonna be teaching on Saturdays or Sundays?
I signed up for Saturdays, but I'm gonna do something. Because my daughter has Girl Scouts
On Sundays?
on Saturday.
Saturdays.
So
Okay.
Saturdays will be better.
Seems like we're missing somebody. There's
Yeah,
six of
Ariana
us.
just went over somewhere.
No, I was thinking there were six of you. There's six with me. There's six with Mary. Okay, so this you guys know is
Oh, my-
Mary. This is like the first time she put this on here, and it wasn't. It's kind of a weird. What did she call it? Teaching dual diagnosis. Okay, so I just thought we would literally start with. I wasn't really sure who we were gonna have. I was, even though she geared it towards returning people, I kind of had in mind that more new people might come. Well, technically, we have two new people. Technically.
Technically, I'm kind of new to the actual teaching,
Right.
but I've been around you guys.
Does everyone know Chris?
Yes.
Hi, Chris.
I'm Chris. I've been pretty much around Strut since I was 6, so I'm now
So he's
16.
very familiar. But I thought we would just sort of go over some typical diagnoses we see before we do dual diagnoses. Now it's getting hot. And let you guys ask any questions about any diagnoses that you don't feel that familiar with. And then I thought we would just really quick go through the ATS progression. If you haven't attended one of those, I don't know if she did those yet. I don't know if you paid attention to the training. And then I thought we would break up, and we'll probably break up into twos, since like groups of two. And I had these scenarios that I thought we could sort of present to the group and just have a group discussion about.
Can't read without my glasses.
Okay, so so for those of you that have been doing this a while, what's the number one most common diagnosis we do see?
We
Someone
couldn't
who's
hear you.
autistic.
Autism.
She says under her breath.
Is there? You know what? I did forget. I was gonna when we were introducing, because I'm not familiar with everyone. But what? Well, what? Do you have experience working with people with disabilities? With nothing? No.
None.
Okay.
None. I've taught skiing before.
Okay.
Yes.
That's cool. So, what do we know about autism?
They're very kind of like set in their ways, almost.
Okay. Structured.
Uh,
Hard to. Not very flexible. You're saying.
right.
That can certainly be.
It's a spectrum for a reason. There's a broad range of capabilities, from
Mhm.
nonverbal to very high function.
Right. Okay. Anything?
It's a sensory.
Sensory is a big deficit. Yeah. I mean, everyone with autism presents different. But some of those are some of the more common things that we see. Sensory impairments and social too. And again, I'm going through these quick, and I'm going to give you a chance to, ask questions about, or just, if I'm going through them too quick, let me know. But another one I have on here is traumatic brain injuries. We do work with a lot of people with traumatic brain injuries. What do we know about people with traumatic brain injuries?
Depends on what suffered from the injury.
Right. Which can cause what kind of
Like some
impairments?
people don't remember what happened, before that, or
Memory
some
loss?
people, yeah,
You
or
mean
some
memory
people
loss?
might have trouble remembering things that just happened,
Yep.
or they
It's more common that it's short term, like what they recently did than what they did 10 years ago.
Yeah.
They might remember those long term things. lot better than what they did yesterday or something like that.
It can also, it's also like autism, there's a broad range of afflictions with
Absolutely.
traumatic brain injury, from that short-term memory loss to paralysis,
Yes.
partial paralysis. There could be physical or cognitive issues.
Right. Or both.
Yeah,
Or both.
right.
But right, there are plenty of people out there walking around that you would not you wouldn't identify as having a brain injury because
Yeah.
maybe there isn't a physical manifestation, but you might notice it after, or I've had plenty of people that I've known that I had no idea. Like, but right, so it and it, as far as how it presents or manifests physically, that can vary as well. A lot of times it's paralysis on one side or weakness on one side of the body, depending what side of the brain was affected. So that's common. That's similar to a stroke in that way. And a lot of times we just, you can tell in the gait or. Can you think of anyone that you know that it only affected upper extremity or lower extremity? I think it's usually left or right,
Yeah,
or all over.
right, or all over.
Yeah.
And the memory loss is one that, it really shows up dramatically. We have a woman who comes, and every week she's a brand new skier, pretty much.
Every week.
She doesn't remember. The good news is your brain actually has muscle memory, so boom, she's back out there again. Michelle, talk. So she's out there again, skiing again. She can, but not very well. She never really progresses very far because every week she's almost new again.
I skied with her once and I remember answering the same
She
question.
almost
about
doesn't
10 times.
remember from run to run.
Right.
She's done with that.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
a perfectly normally functioning person up until car accident. Life is over, as you know it.
I put down other developmental disabilities, other than autism. Other ones we see would be Down syndrome, ADHD, ADD, those learning disabilities. Mara can explain more of that PDD better than I can.
PDD, NOS, basically it's a catch-all area for anyone that, it's a pervasive developmental disorder, which means it's all-encompassing and it's probably the catch-all for autism spectrum prior to a final diagnosis. So in the educational terms, and the NOS stands for not otherwise specified. So until they actually hone in and figure out exactly what's going on, they know that there's a pervasive developmental disorder going on, and they're just not quite sure exactly what it is yet.
You see that a lot. in the
Sometimes you'll
applications.
have that for, you see it in younger kids, but sometimes they never exactly define, so it stays the diagnosis.
And then I just put like emotionally disturbed and other like mental illness type. I think we're seeing a little bit more of those, especially in our wounded warriors.
PTSD.
What?
PTSD.
Yes, PTSD. The kids that
Parsons.
come from Parsons is where you'll see this a lot. I mean, not that you don't see it in the other, the
Vanderheiden might be coming
Oh,
this year
really?
also, because Lauren Serkin,
Oh, right,
who was
she's working there
formerly
now.
working at Parsons, is now working at Vanderheiden, and they have the same type of.
She said she's
disability.
also still.
Teenagers?
Yes.
She said she's also still doing the Parsons
Yes.
program. So
Yes.
that's cool. She's just trying to make her old job so she can come ski.
It's kind of personal.
I don't care about her motivations, as long as she keeps
Yeah.
coming back.
That's right.
We're good with that.
That's right.
So, I don't know who's worked with this population before, but, so that's like really quick, just going through some of the primary diagnoses we see. We see a lot more than that. I thought I'd let you guys bring up any particular diagnosis you feel you're not comfortable with or would like to have more information about, if there's any.
I think the most challenging ones are the nonverbal kids. Those are the most challenging lessons you'll have, in my opinion.
Yes, because frequently they're not motivated.
Yeah, it's hard to, it's hard to know whether or not you're being effective in getting to them a lot of times, because there might not be signals
no, you're not, if they're having behaviors,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. They usually let you know if you're not doing well. So it's the other side that you don't.
Right, right.
Yeah,
Well, it's
you're
hard
right.
to understand with a sensory disorder if someone is not feeling well, or they have some other thing going on and they can't communicate it to you, so it comes out in the form of a behavior. So, you know, they could come to the ski area and have a fever or a stomach ache, and no one would know because they can't communicate that to their families.
Kristen and I even had a girl that was verbal, and we had no idea she wasn't feeling well until she just
Vomited on you?
vomited all over us.
Oh.
in the roundhouse on the sofa. But I mean,
What
she
were you doing in the roundhouse on the sofa?
that's where she wanted to
lesson.
take a break.
With the kids.
She wanted to go
In the bar she's talking about.
No, we weren't by the bar. We were using the restroom and warming up by the little fireplace there.
Spot.
It's a comfortable spot, and it was quieter than this girl was. Anyways,
Hey.
any other diagnoses you want to talk about or disabilities you want to talk about?
Physical.
Oh yeah, I skipped over my spinal cord injury.
All physical disabilities.
Well, right,
All
and I was just
physical
putting
ones.
some common ones we see. Well, I mean, the TBI manifests physically a lot. Another common one we see is spinal cord injury. A person with spinal cord injury, you can't answer this, would ski how?
Gonna ski.
Can I answer it?
Yeah?
5 skis. Sit
Or,
skis.
Maybe.
sit skis, yeah.
They really could ski any way. They might be bi-ski, they might be a mono-ski, they might be a dual ski, they might be a 4-tracker. They might be a 3-tracker, they might be a 2-tracker.
Might be a snowboarder.
Slider.
They might be a slider.
Put a wall out there.
It all depends. That's the catchphrase
We
for
adapt.
adaptive. It all depends.
We're not talking about the adult thing. Nothing.
Oh, that cold air is back on. One other one I didn't put on here that I put in some of these we're gonna do is visually impaired as well. Which, I don't know what trainings everyone's been going to. I don't even know what's been offered yet, so I'm really not sure.
There was
what
a
Pretty much
BI
everything's
one.
been offered. We're in the second phase here, so.
Okay,
Another
everybody
big
should have
one
a little-
is cerebral palsy is a big one for us.
that is a big one. And again, that's another one that they ski how it depends.
Or
On the
how
severity.
afflicted they are.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them are in bicycles.
Cerebral palsy is usually muscle development.
It can be a weakness, it can be a rigidity of the muscles, it can be like a hypertonic, like a lot of tone, or hypotonic. We had a girl once when the 1 year we were at Brody that she was not what I would think of as CP, but she was floppy as all. And isn't that little Grace, she has CP. Do you remember Grace? Oh, she's about this big. Do you remember Grace? I put her when.
Oh.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
she's like 4 or 5 now, but so right, so it could be somebody, you know, who a lot of times there's not, especially if it's hypertonic, there are not a lot of muscle control. Anyways, any others? I mean, we're gonna talk about, what I did was I put these scenarios on paper, combining some of these, and we'll, it'll generate more specific discussion. So has everyone had some sort of introduction at least to ATS? Chris? Have you had some introduction to ATS?
What's that? What's that, ATS?
That's your answer.
Well, it depends on where you
Did you
American
go to,
Teaching System, the learning about the Wedge Christie.
have,
No?
no,
I thought you were there. No.
have you?
Yeah, yeah, I think that was the first one I had to.
You what? Oh, that's right, you were, right, you taught regular skiing, so.
It's been a while.
So Chris, pay attention. We're gonna do a really,
You can wait,
What is
you
that?
can wait. I can
we're
wait.
gonna do a really,
Alright.
brief overview of ATS. So, Sue, where do you start in a lesson? If it's never ever, just say two tracker for now, never ever skied, what's first?
Once you have your skis on, fitting the skis, then walking across the mountain with one ski,
Okay.
balance.
Okay. So just working on getting comfortable with having this big long thing on your feet. Okay. And then what?
And, well, walking across the mountain, turning, and then starting to, once they have their balance, starting to, glide,
Okay.
turn, stop.
Okay, so start basically getting comfortable with having the equipment on, progressing to a straight run to like a terrain assisted stop. So you're not asking them to know how to stop yet. And then introducing, once they're balanced and they can do that comfortably, introducing turns. According to ATS, we do that with a wedge. Not everybody teaches that way. I don't teach that way. I do if I need to. Do you teach that way?
If you need to.
But do you start that way?
Start with straight run.
Right.
And if they've got the capability, now that we have terrain-based learning, we
Right.
certainly give that a shot first.
Yeah.
And only introduce the wedge if you have to, because it's gonna take a fair bit of breaking.
So the wedge Christie, the open track parallel, and the dynamic parallel are the milestones in the ATS curriculum. Okay? That's called, in PSIA terminology, that's like the foundations of the curriculum, and those are the center line maneuvers or movements. Okay? Then what Rich and Mindy are referring to is if you don't have to teach the wedge, you can go to other stepping stones to get to the end result, which is dynamic skiing. And those stepping stones could be terrain-based learning, which is what we have here. We have this wonderful playground on our beginner terrain. Or it could be a curriculum that's called direct to parallel, where you skip over building a big platform with your skis and you learn how to make turns because you're very agile and probably have great balance, and it's happening naturally with your skis parallel, and they start to make the movements with their feet to make turns without building a wedge.
I think you can usually see that in their straight run. You can have a pretty good idea in the straight run if they're gonna need to learn a wedge or not.
Mhm.
Usually.
And it comes to your judgment as to where you go with them. But it's very important that you understand what those milestones are, and after you have them sliding, you know that the next step in your curriculum is you're going to get them to a wedge, unless you see otherwise and you know how to take them in another direction. Otherwise, building the wedge and learning to turn with the wedge is the foundation for balance in having a wider platform. And many of our students, probably most, are doing the wedge. And then it becomes complicated when you're adding the equipment, because you think because you're on one ski that you can't do a wedge, but the maneuvers and the movements are the same, and they're called equivalent movements, even though it's a mono ski or it's a 3-tracker with outriggers. It's still the same movement patterns. Does that make sense? Kind of in a nutshell?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any questions about that?
No, I think I did go to the training on that one.
If you haven't, you certainly will on snow. Because even though we don't
think you
always
did
teach
too.
it, it is important to be able to until like Mayor said, to understand it. Okay. So why don't we split to our pairs? I was kind of hoping we'd have a snowboarder here, because I have some snowboard scenarios. But I guess
I
we
am a
haven't-
snowboarder.
You are a snowboarder.
So is Rich.
Well, let me see. Let's think. Once
So
you're-
what's the task? What are we doing with
We're
the,
pairing up, and it basically says on here what to do. So when you're gonna pair up, and we'll maybe take, I don't know, whatever, 10 minutes or something, with your partner to discuss. You're basically gonna bring it back to the larger group to present what the scenario is and how you would go about. It tells you on here what I want you to do. Basically, it's describing how you would, tackle this student, and what considerations you'd have in mind. Okay. I'm just trying to think who I want to have what.
I can
I would say have a experienced person.
Yeah, I was gonna say Rich and, is that?
Renee.
That's okay.
And then,
how about-
and put these three together. Put the three of them together, unless, unless,
Then we'll each do two, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
And then come back and you can do, and then you can do more that way. You do it again.
Yeah, okay. We'll start you guys with this one.
And then if you don't mind, my camera's gonna be on you guys as you work. So,
I mean, I said 10 minutes, but if, whatever time you need, I don't think you'll need more.
All right, scenario one, you're assigned to a never, ever 15-year-old male student with autism who has moderate sensory impairments and significant social impairment. He is also visually impaired. Demonstrate how you will begin this lesson and complete an assessment, then discuss lesson considerations. So he's a teenager, autism, sensory, and social, and visually impaired.
First, you would want to introduce yourself to him and ask him how, what the depth of those impairments are, so you can know how to work out that. Because if you don't know exactly how, how well you can sense things, it's, you might overestimate or underestimate. If he was visually impaired, you could kind of introduce him to the equipment like the skis, but he has sensory impairment.
We're hoping he's not. Let's say he's not.
Well, he's visually impaired.
Yeah, but we're gonna decide not to.
Okay, so then you're showing that thing. Like if he was completely blind and he didn't have any sensory issues, you can introduce him and grab his hand.
Wish I could do it.
He'll start to feel learn about the edge because that can you kind of sharpen and you let him feel what it is that he's using. But if you can see a little bit more, I guess that's what you can show it to him. Probably demonstrate how you put it on, what it's going to feel like.
My concern with him would be how patient is he? How fast does he need to get out on the trail? How much patience does he have with listening to me talk? Or stuff that's going on in the room, trying to assess. Most of the kids that I've had, I'm not very experienced, but most of the kids that I've had with autism needed to be out doing stuff right away. We're not very patient with. So yeah, start with parents, do the most important thing, sharp edge of the ski, that's great, and then get out on the trail as fast as possible.
Yeah, you want to walk him through a little bit of it first because and you can probably explain it to going up to the left because he'll be kind of interesting and it'll be a little bit less because then here it's kind of loud and it might be a little bit too much. So autistic kids can't really take too much information at one point.
Right, and definitely.
Yeah,
Fewer
kind of
words,
overload,
more
yeah.
doing it.
Yeah.
Yep, move it on, start over there on the terrain and just start with a straight run.
And the quick discussion with the parents might, some pointers as to what might trigger them, what rewards they suggest to you. But definitely fewer equipment.
Also include the kid on your.
Equipment may be a challenge. The boots may be sensitive.
Also you wanna. I forgot what I was gonna say. Oh, you also wanna include them on your discussion, like what you're gonna be doing next. Because you can't wait just like, oh, we're gonna go on this now. 'Cause
Clear and predictable.
yeah, you wanna make sure he's aware of what's gonna go on. It's like, I think we should go on the 180. What do you think? You know, show him 180.
We'd start over here though in the cricket.
Yeah, I'm just saying, like, if you say, because there are some kids who get the hang of it pretty quickly, or, so autistic kids are generally athletic.
Yeah. That's been my experience as well. Many have a really good sense of balance. So once you get on the skis, they're steady. Many of them have that, yeah.
So maybe the few words that we use could be to set a clear goal. Now it's clear, start on cricket, get a sense of your balance and how you turn, stop.
That's a lot. If you can turn and stop and while that's that would be great. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Like the first run, you just do a straight run to a terrain assisted stop. Okay. Next one. Yeah. Well, that was fun, right? I thought. Okay. Again. Good balance. Person has good balance. Now we try to stop. Turn. Stop. Yeah. Now we switch to stop. Good. Next run. Then we try to turn and what do we do? Do we teach the wedge or do we do straight run? Or
Maybe teach him to turn
parallel, I mean.
in the wedges,
Or
and then try and gradually more shallow wedge.
and visually impaired, so we have a person on.
Yeah, test a bit.
Side.
Want to make sure you turn.
Talking.
Yeah.
So when they're visually impaired, typically,
We were all visually impaired right now.
BI training
Yeah.
in a while. So typically you would almost like touch their back to guide them. If you didn't have the autism or not.
You guys have to talk louder. I know I can't hear you.
Oh, sorry.
I'm just thinking that that kid, we'd be on either side.
Yeah, you probably would.
Yeah.
Again, just with an elbow, just a light
Yeah,
touch,
just a
just
light
to know
touch.
that,
Yeah, they actually prefer that.
right? For a start.
See how they react
Since
to
it's a
that.
complete beginner.
Yeah, because the ultimate goal is to get them into high school.
I would probably go with parallel. I would try to do parallel. Okay, we're just gonna point your skis
Yeah.
to the left.
The best.
Point your skis to the right. We're both there to stop the person. Point your skis to the right. We're gonna go across the train until you stop. And see how it goes, right? And see if I can do it with just all.
Good.
So what kind of signs might they give that they're
Who's gonna present? I think you should. You look great. You clearly know what you're doing.
I have been around,
Yeah.
stride since I was 6.
You have parents that does it?
Yeah, both my parents did it.
Here?
Yeah. And,
Who are they?
Anyway, Crystal, in fact. Yeah. So, they taught me, other people taught
You
me.
have a sister or
Yeah, Kylie.
Kylie? Yeah. I love this.
You guys about
Nice.
time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Alright, whenever you guys are done, Rich, you can head back over.
But you see when they're frustrated, they kind of sit there. You can tell when they're frustrated. They start, like making noises or start laughing.
Okay, when I put my coat on, the heat comes on. When I take my coat off, the cool air comes on. Alright. I don't really remember which numbers I gave you guys. Whoever had the lower number, you can start. Who got What number does yours say?
Scenario 1.
Oh, well, you start.
Oh, think it might be lower?
So,
Yes.
so read it
Yeah,
nice
one
and
of them.
loud, Chris, for everybody to hear, because they don't know your scenario.
Alright, so we were signed with a male skier, 15 years old. He has autism. He has moderate sensory impairments and significant social impairments. He's also visually impaired, and it's asking us how would we begin this lesson and complete an assessment.
And he's a never ever, you left out.
Yes. So what we did was, introduce yourself, obviously, make sure that they know who they're gonna be with, and ask the parents like tips, what motivates, what triggers, what just what the depth of his impairments are.
Which more often than not, the parents are going to offer that information without you asking. But it's good, yes, ask to know from them, because that's who knows the best.
And when you are discussing something, make sure you include the person in it too.
Include.
Include the your lesson, because they don't like it when you just do something suddenly,
Okay.
because they're
so,
not very flexible and they're
So you're saying to prepare them,
Yes.
so they know what to expect.
Preset the goals
yeah.
and expectations, relate the expectations.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you want to introduce them to the equipment. They, because like I said, it's the person never skied,
Never skied, yeah.
probably never heard of skiing before, and just present the ski, the boots, the helmet, all the equipment, and you want to make sure you use clear, concise, small words, and kind of use it in like a calm kind of setting, because autistic people have kind of like low
Tolerance.
yeah tolerance.
For all the, and it's crazy here on weekends.
Yeah. Like you can use back there, past the bathrooms and the locker,
Mhm.
because it's usually very quiet there.
Quieter. Okay. Okay. So this asks you to demonstrate how you would begin this lesson. Does one of you want to do that? I mean, you brought up a lot. Is there anything that he missed that anyone can think of?
That we leave this space as soon as possible.
Leave this
This
space.
space, yeah, get outside.
Yeah.
Be ready as an instructor,
Yeah.
so when they come in, you're ready to go, instead of them waiting for
Yeah.
you to put your boots on, your coat on, and everything else.
Things will be much better as soon as the skis are on.
What are some potential triggers this person could have?
Too much noise.
Okay. What else?
Too many people, because he says that he's not very social. So
Okay.
I'm pretty sure
Right.
if
Right.
he's like in a big crowd like this, and it gets very, very crowded in here.
Yes.
There's like a whole bunch of people screaming and talking loud and just that clutter.
I mean, a social impairment doesn't necessarily mean he's not going to be social per se. It might mean his social skills are
Right, but
abnormal.
also there's gonna be a lot of people that person doesn't really know, all in like a very small space,
Mm-hmm.
and that might make the the kid or the person upset.
What about once you get out of this space? When you get outside, what are some potential triggers out there?
His equipment can be uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
The boots, especially for a kid with autism.
Absolutely.
Helmet,
Maybe the helmet you.
gloves.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have challenges with all those pieces.
And even the cold. That's an uncomfortable sensory.
Well, he says he's moderate. I don't know that.
So there's some, yeah. I mean, any of those things could potentially. I mean, and those are, obviously if he's never skied before, his parents aren't going to be able to tell you, oh, he doesn't like the boots. But they might be able to tell you, other things that, So, one thing you just really truly need to be prepared for anything, right?
If he is a never ever skier, the parents aren't skiers either, you might want to, the first time down, is go to the rental shop with them.
Absolutely.
And make sure the boots, the socks aren't bunched up down in there, they get the appropriate equipment, because they are sensory, they're really hypersensitive to anything. If the a sock is bunched up down the leg, that's gonna destroy the lesson potentially. Something as simple as that.
Yeah, and it might take you 3 hours to figure that out, what it is.
Or you may never.
Why he keep, right,
Just a
why does
disaster
he keep hitting
just
his
about.
leg or something?
Yeah.
So, there's something you didn't, a piece of this that you didn't mention, how you would, address.
Visual impairment.
Yeah, so what about that?
So staying.
Very close, you know, very in their sight.
Yeah, we didn't say what kind of, you know, he might have some sight, he might not have any. What if,
We talked about like a light touch on the elbow
okay,
to let them know you're there, but not, crowd or, just a light touch.
okay,
And a lot of, that would be where there would be a lot of verbal guidance for turns or for stopping. Other than that, there wouldn't be much verbal guidance.
Like if he's like really visually impaired, like you could like take his hand, put it on the ski, and like sort of like let him feel it, because he's never
right.
before, and it'd probably make him a little more uncomfortable if he knew what he was, going to be using.
And talk him through what this part of the ski does and what this part of the
Yeah.
ski does and,
And make sure of the edge, because that can be sharp. Like it actually cut my glove once.
really?
Yeah, because I had racing skis, which are
Yep. Yeah, you won't get those in the rentals, but,
They are sharp. You don't wanna slide your hand down.
no, you wouldn't wanna slide your bare hand on it, no. Especially if you've never done that.
Right.
Especially if, right. So what else, once you're out moving?
Just verbally guiding them to the slope.
Okay.
So once we're on
show
the
him
slope.
how it's done. Like so using demonstrating how you like walk up the slope.
Say,
Like demonstrate like on them. Like I remember the video that ran on Wednesday where the person was on his back and you like sort of like use their sort of use them as a
So they
puppet.
feel
Yeah.
what you want.
So that's
Yeah,
called kinesthetic learning, and you're actually manipulating their legs or their body parts so that they feel what it's supposed to feel like.
And that can be really challenging with an autistic person who
It
doesn't wanna
can
be
be.
touched.
Yeah.
It can be.
You're trying to guided discovery, right? You move them into the position, but they might not like you touching them, so that could be a real challenge.
So what would be another option though, then if they're really that sensitive to touch and they're that visually impaired that you're not so comfortable just seeing where they go? What other options do we have, or tools do we have?
Tethers
Maybe tethers?
Ski down.
Ski paddle, what?
Hold on to the pole.
Mm-hmm.
Like a bamboo pole, you mean?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any of the tools.
Any of those things. I've seen,
Slide.
I've seen people with visual impairments only for that reason use a slider.
To get the feel of sliding first.
Yeah, and they feel comfortable because it's very stable. And I'm not saying automatically go do that. I mean, you're constantly assessing what, I mean, the slider might be my sort of last resort because it is so cumbersome and yeah. But if they're, if they're that, because you can be touching the slider, not touching them, so you can still have a lot of control on them, over them. Okay. Any other thoughts?
Just a comment about the touch thing is if you do find that your student has sensitivity to being touched, you might want to explore if it's light touch or do they tolerate much better having heavy pressure touch, because sometimes they will respond really well to a deep pressure touch. So you can actually hold them a whole lot tighter and they won't mind it, but a light touch is what causes them to go crazy.
gets them upset.
And you really have to think too about like all the senses, like noises out there could trigger them, especially if a snowboarder comes up behind them or something like that. snowmaking, the chairlift, if there's music or whatever.
So we actually have a student in our stride population that has this exact disability.
Many of these were having people in mind.
Yes. Okay. Oh, you did. I see. Okay.
Not all
And
of
he
them, but-
skis at Catamount now, and he is completely independent. He has learned. He has enough vision that he doesn't really need a guide, but he does have a significant visual impairment, and he knows the mountain very, very well, and it's the only mountain he skis at because his family owns it. So he's been skiing that mountain since he was 4 or 5.
Is he skiing a wedge
Not
now?
Gilbert.
or
No,
parallel?
he skis open track parallel. Yep.
Not good, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he's a good buddy of mine.
That's exactly who I had in mind when I wrote this.
Yep.
Yeah, it was nothing about him.
All right. You had
Scenario
5.
Yep.
Read it nice and loud for us.
All right, you are assigned to a 28-year-old active male mono skier with a T12 spinal cord injury, which he acquired as a result of an ATV accident. He also has mild TBI as a result, which primarily manifests in memory and processing deficits. He has skied once previously and had a successful first lesson that he is able to ski independently down the beginner slope, making long, wide, skidded turns. He is eager to get to black terrain. Describe how you would begin the lesson and discuss lesson considerations. So, I did not know what T12, but apparently that you have a lot of upper body strength for T12. Nor
So
did
did
I
Rich
really know what a
explain
mono
that?
skier was, so yes, he
Okay.
explained that stuff to me. So, what we talked about is taking in consideration that he has memory and processing deficits. We would, of course, start him out in the beginner slope again to see what he remembers, and then we talked a little bit about muscle memory, so brain muscle memory he might have, even if he doesn't remember it. So start him out like that, and just try different angles to see how he's processing the information and to see what works the best, I guess, for processing. That's all I can remember. What else did we say?
I'll ask.
Go ahead.
Test for me. Make sure he has basic skills before taking him to the expert level. Right?
Yeah, that's why we would start again at the beginner slope.
Yeah.
Each lesson until we become comfortable with what his memory loss is, right? And build up his muscle, his brain muscle memory. So when we get to the point where we know, okay, yeah, he doesn't remember how to do it, but one time down, and he'll be right back where he was again, hopefully. And not just jump to the expert train because he wants to go to the expert train.
Well, honestly, yes. I mean, regardless of the memory impairment, this guy's been skiing once.
It's-
But like a lot of our young, active spinal cord injured people,
They may have a
They're
poor
like Rich.
understanding of danger and risk.
What
Right,
was the
that's-
main thing I said to do?
Keep him safe.
There you go.
Yes.
Gotta get those kudos in.
Yes, I actually, you know what I had on here that I was, before we started this, I was gonna remind you, what are the priorities? You can't answer. We have 3, yes. In what order? We have 3 things that we're focusing on in every lesson.
Safety.
Yes,
Fun.
yes.
And make a goal. I think it's make him as independent as possible.
Say that again?
To make him as independent as possible, I think that's like your main goal.
Okay, yeah, learning, but in that order, so that's, right. So, yes, whatever you do, keep this guy, and not all of them, safe, but,
Right.
some of these were meant to sort of glare on more safety concerns.
Yeah, you have a 28-year-old that's, hell bent for, adrenaline rush, and they could really hurt themselves badly because they're in a monoski, which is independent, so, you're not gonna take them up unless you know they can do it, so.
Okay, great. So, I'm gonna give you some more. Do you wanna switch your groups around? For a little variety?
That's a good idea.
Why don't we put, Chris with Rich,
Alright.
And Renee, you can go. We'll slow you down a little bit.
Oh my goodness.
This might be a little bit of a challenge for you guys, I don't know, try that. Alright, scenario 3, you were assigned to a
Do you want this
30-year-old
facing her?
female skier who skied twice previously. She has MS and skis in a dual ski.
Nice and loud, guys.
She's also completely blind, she's highly motivated. She's a highly motivated, aggressive skier. She has only ski free terrain, but would like to advance to blue, preferably today. Describe lesson considerations and how you would sequence this lesson. What's a dual ski?
Yeah, what's a dual ski?
We need help.
Mindy.
Is that a six?
What's a dual ski?
What's a dual ski? It's like a mono ski, but with 2 skis.
So it's a
not
set.
like a bi-ski, 'cause the skis are like regular skis. It's
Tie her up off the ground, it's in between the mono and the bi.
So what,
So
Veronica
it's
skis on?
more stable than a mono ski. It's
2 regular skis,
Huh?
and they both articulate just like the mono ski would, and you use outriggers with it.
Okay.
And you can be independent in it.
Oh, okay, okay.
You've never seen
Oh,
it?
right.
It's taught very much like the mono with 1 tether, and you try and get them to be independent, but it gives you a wider base.
Okay.
Did we have our girl on
Okay.
So, and
All
also
right,
it
let me
doesn't say what
tackle
she-
this one. Okay.
Completely blind.
Mayor, what's aphasia? I can't remember.
Aphasia,
Aphasia.
exactly what you just said, I can't remember.
It's,
You said it was a memory.
it's not a memory, it's a,
Speech,
it's a,
language.
how you process, right, so that says global aphasia.
Yes.
So basically, that means what they hear and what they say doesn't always make sense. So they might understand only a portion of what you say to them, and what they say to you is, they think they're saying all sorts of common
That's
stuff
in
or normal
consideration.
stuff, but it's like word salad.
First of all, to keep her safe.
So
She's
it's a
very
salad.
aggressive.
That's-
She probably wants
I've
to
never
go
heard
beyond
that
her
before.
abilities.
So you can have expressive aphasia
going
where
to
it's
each
just
other,
what they say doesn't make
and
sense,
we're gonna
or you can
start
have
on
just receptive
the
aphasia where they can
and
say, well, everything they say makes sense, but what
we're
you say to
gonna,
them doesn't,
Yeah.
to them, or at least not most of it, or you can have global where it's both.
So if they
Tether
have both, then
is
I
going
should
to
just
make
speak Greek to
sure
them.
Go ahead and
It's
show
gonna all be
me
all
what
Greek
you
coming
can
out,
do.
right?
Well, they're,
Got
they
it.
might,
Remember to lead,
well,
like, see,
you know,
just go over
it's not
how
that they
you
can't
turn,
understand
which is,
anything.
remember,
Yeah.
there's the
They
box,
just can't understand everything.
That was a
outriggers in the
challenge.
box, and you lead with your outrigger.
Yeah.
That's how you turn.
So.
Oh, I thought we're
And you go ahead and initiate the turns if you would like.
So is the Tessier more,
I'm gonna be there prepared if she's not
Yeah,
able
that
to
would be
like more
properly
finesse, more-
initiate the stop, but
So,
she's not prepared to control her and stop. So just say, go ahead, ski down the 180, nice and control, show me your best turns. And, I'll still call out stop.
skis are more put together.
And see how she does that going there, right?
So you're gonna stop her after like 2 turns or to let her go?
We're gonna go down the 180, but we're gonna go slow and we're gonna
Okay.
prepare to stop
we-
her if she
okay.
can't.
Do you think that woman that we had,
That's what you need to find out.
do you think she would see out of those?
Yeah, and we're gonna do that a couple of times, even if she does that great.
What's a better way? You could ask him, you get this little, you know, whether we understand this, you're asking what he was saying.
She's almost completely blind. I've never had anyone blind in the system before. So I'm gonna have to call out the turns. I can't let her do it. I can't let her do it around. I'm gonna call the turns. I'm gonna make sure she knows how to do it. Let her do her own turns. Call them out and be prepared to turn her if she can. And I'm gonna talk to her about the turning. She's blind. So I'm gonna make And the way I call out the turns is I say and right and left. So that gives her a little time. I'm gonna tell her
remember, but
muscles.
it was-
So I say and I want your body facing straight down the hill. And then right. So if you just say right I've gotten into a flow. And straight, ski straight. Straight ski.
That makes sense.
What other considerations do you have? So it's also making sure that we have a good understanding of one another, those terms, not just that she can do it, but that the tenderer can communicate and call out those terms well, so we're in a good flow. On the 180, is what the one of the concerns with her is that she's gonna wanna do something, that goes well, then we move up to Smart, also 180, do you know this about?
Don't, they, well, I mean, I've skied up before, but it's been
A long time.
Yeah.
It's really hard to move off.
I know.
It's really hard to move off of that 180 because it's like a big jump to
My memory.
there's no, 180 is a short green and it's hard to find a longer green. The next step is, the next easiest thing is like bud thing. And it has a couple of switches.
Yeah.
So you have to make sure, concern with her would be to make sure that if she can't control a turn, that I'm able to stop her easily.
Or maybe even before you get to the rest.
Oh, yeah.
Take her off the tether.
I would, would I take her off the tether? That's a good question.
If she can hear you.
Aren't you always gonna tell them?
Okay, so what they said is dual ski is a ski that you can ski.
So you can take them.
Yeah, you certainly, I wouldn't be comfortable, I'm sure I wouldn't be comfortable doing that for the first day. Well, she's skiing twice previously, so.
Especially if she's overweight.
Um, It would depend on the conditions, it would depend how, is it icy, I don't know, I think my first time skiing was someone I would keep her on the tether, but one thing is if she was doing really well, I can not have really any tension on the tether and just have her very close so that I can stop her if I need to without pulling too hard, but she can have calm
Say though, when you've had
Pretty independent, but have that backup.
Yeah.
I learned.
And I would just, she wanted to ski without the tether, I would just say, well, you can't do it till I'm comfortable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And multiple sclerosis, what are the concerns there? It's like a muscle fatigue, right? I'm not sure exactly.
I think it's slowly losing.
Control of muscle
Yeah,
fatigue.
Yeah, yeah.
My uncle had it next to him, just like, he acts perfect, he can build a house and have, but then sometimes he just gets
The heat and
like
the
completely exhausted. So she did,
Email that Gregory.
she just had to be very, right, she could be thinking she needs more than her muscles. Yes, some concerns, just paying attention to fatigue and muscle strength.
30-year-old could be how much
And,
is really diagnosed too, because
yeah,
sometimes they
and he, making sure she can't.
So you don't have to be a business, right?
Right.
although she's got a environmental attitude, so she probably knows.
So that might lead you towards, probably more abilities, and you might go into a bias.
But maybe not, if it's not.
Yeah, that's another thing. Lawrence is-
Are you guys perplexed?
Nope.
We're just trying to think of MS. That's really the muscle
Right.
weakness, and it progresses.
Yes,
Muscle weakness.
Right, so with the,
degenerative, often. Sometimes it plateaus
I
and
was
you
gonna say,
go
it
on
also
long
fluctuates.
remissions, which is generally when we see someone's.
And heat, a lot of times, is flare-ups, right? Heat.
I don't know, I
Yeah.
don't know. There's a lot of different types.
what are your concerns with someone with MS?
What are your concerns? The biggest concern is fatigue.
Is fatigue.
And it depends on where it's attacking. And I believe that your person would attack the optic nerve. case you haven't figured it out, she's a real person. Somebody that we've
Well,
taught.
to the best of my memory.
And it happens to be somebody that Mindy and I taught together out west.
Oh, really?
Huh?
So we'll
She
share.
obviously, we're talking about, she obviously remembers.
Sometimes that's where you get the diagnosis, is you lose your vision, right? That's the first thing to go.
No, it's usually later
It's later.
onset.
Did she know her limits? That's the question with the aggressive skier, right?
No, she did not.
You know your limits. That's what I was, yeah. I'm always asking myself the same thing. You know your limits.
Well, I think a lot of us, I mean, I had this very experience last year out west. A lot of us know our limits, but we're afraid to share them with others. I taught with, whenever I teach a bi-ski lesson out west, I make sure that the other instructor knows that unless it's a beginner bi-skier, I'm not comfortable tethering it. And this guy had been doing, this was his first year at this event, but he's been doing it for, he'd been teaching for a while and whatever. He said he was good. Well, he wasn't. and the conditions were tough. They were definitely tough. And not even one run. We didn't even get through a run before the skier was done and ready, and requested another instructor next lesson. And it's frustrating for me because here we are at the top of the hill and I'm like, okay, I know I can't help you, but at least not, but you see it a lot out there because people are used to and comfortable with their little mountain and they know their handful of clients and blah, 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 and then they get out there and they get this 200-pound guy and they get these steep hills and they get this deep powder and, but so what I'm saying is if you're not comfortable, you need to say something.
Well, I mean, with a highly motivated, aggressive skier, the danger is you want to do it. It's fun, right?
Yeah, depending if you're comfortable doing what it is you need to do. All right, who wants to start? Who's got the lower number?
3.
All right, you guys.
I'll read it.
Ladies.
And you can explain.
3?
You are assigned to a 30-year-old female skier who has skied twice previously. She has MS and skis in a dual ski. She is also almost completely blind. She is a highly motivated, aggressive skier. She has only skied green terrain but would like to advance to blue terrain, preferably today. Describe lesson considerations and how you would sequence this lesson.
So I had to be reminded what that a dual ski is. It's a sit ski that can be skied independently. I'm only experienced.
Do you know what a dual ski is?
Bi-ski.
Yes,
Unfortunately, there's
Chris has not been to the sit-down one yet,
So
right?
the sit ski can articulate like a mono ski, can turn really well, doesn't have to be tethered,
Doesn't have to be, but can be.
can be, and probably doesn't have fixed riggers.
Correct.
Correct.
So it turns well and can fall quickly,
Mhm.
easily.
It's basically a stable higher mono ski.
So I would have her tethered for sure, and we would start on the 180, and I would make sure she understood about turning, and I would, so she's visually impaired, is one concern. The other one is that she might get tired. And my third concern is that she might want to do more than she's able to do. So we'd start on the 180, and I would tether her, but I would go ahead and I will call the turns, but you're responsible for doing the turns, but I'm ready to stop her or turn if need be, so I'm completely ready. And we do that a couple of times to make sure, and I explained to her that I'm gonna call probably the turns by saying, and right, and left, just so that's, the hand is falling, it's getting straight into the fall line, and then right, so we get a rhythm. Hopefully that works. We make sure I have the call and she has the turn, so that works. We do that a couple times to make sure we're safe and we're solid.
Mhm.
Both me as a tetherer and a caller and her as a turner and a skier. So she really wants to go to the blue, so then we try. I'm confident with the turning and we're safe. She can turn and we're safe, so we go up to left bank probably.
talking, and I didn't know this, that some dual skis have 2 tethers and some 1. So and ours, our main one is a single tether?
We had a Freedom Factory dual ski here, which is an older model and it's not made anymore and it's about 10 years old. The skis are wider apart. It's got a big bucket that's more generic and you have to pad a lot to get in it. And it's kind of like the Mountain Man to the Bionique in the equipment world of bi-skis. And we acquired 2 brand new Tessier dual skis, and they're kind of like the sports car of the dual skis. But there's really only 2 or 3 manufacturers. So what makes it nice is that it's a more compact seat, the bucket. It collapses, so the shell is adjustable a little bit for the person, and the ski width is a little bit more narrow, and it's got a much better shock system. It maneuvers a whole lot easier.
What's the weight range?
They're all of the sit-down pieces of equipment are approximately no more than 180 pounds. And that's not so much as an imposed manufacturer thing, but when you add the weight of the equipment, which is anywhere from 30 to 40 pounds, and it depends on, the skis too, add a little extra weight, then you're looking at a weight of well over 200 pounds that 2 people have to lift. And a deadlift of that kind of weight onto the chairlift requires some strength in your upper body and it's a compromise to your back. So it's more of a safety regulation for everybody in all the programs that we don't want our instructors getting hurt. So people in our country have to stop eating so much.
So, I mean, I brought up the number of tethers because that's gonna make a difference, I think, as to how fast you progress up to steeper terrain. Because if you're on a single tether, she better be controlling her own speed.
Yeah,
At least
this was the
90%.
first time I met her, I would want 2 tethers, so I could just be
Right.
sure.
Oh, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And
Oh,
then
yeah.
if I'm not needing to assist her, then I move to 1 tether. And I think I'd keep 1 tether for sure for the whole first lesson.
Yeah, and
At least.
when you have a tether attached, you can always use a tether that's loose and not affect the
Right,
skier
right,
at
right.
all,
Right.
just for speed
Right.
control.
Safety.
Just for
Yeah,
safety.
yeah.
Very close, right? Just close for me, like not putting any brake on her if she doesn't need it, but ready to
Yeah.
quickly.
And correct me if I'm wrong, when you do have two tethers, it doesn't, the dual ski doesn't react or respond the way a bi-ski does tethered, correct? Like, you're not gonna turn it as sharp as you do it.
You're actually laying it over on its edges of the skis
Okay.
rather than pivoting. I
Right,
mean, with
right,
a dual
okay.
ski, you can actually do a little bit of a pivot or rotation with them as well as laying it over, but yeah, it's more of a letting the ski do the work.
Right.
One of the main differences you mentioned right away is the center of gravity is much higher in dual ski. At least our dual ski, our old dual ski, it's much higher. So if you pull on them a
This
little
one is
bit,
too.
over they're gonna go
Yeah, yeah.
because they're so much higher up the
Yep.
ground than in the bi-skis, especially the bi-unique.
Good point.
Yeah, you're pulling them from a higher position, so you really don't want to, usually you mess up their turn, basically if you start yanking on 2 cords there. And if they
Right.
can't turn, you gotta assist them, that's the difference, but, yeah, it's easy to screw up their turns in a mono and a in a dual ski.
Yeah, makes sense.
So do you use a number system with this woman, coaching her on where to turn?
Well, the interesting thing about this woman is that she's an actual person that Mindy and I, we were sharing it with them earlier, that Mindy and I met, and probably the most complicated lesson that I've ever taught, because she actually had so many different disabilities going on. Not only was there the MS and being in a sit ski and the MS and losing her sight, but she also emotionally and maybe cognitively was dealing and battling with depression, and it came out in anger, which is why she wanted and absolutely, she was adamant about, I can do this and I want this. And she had quickly gone through a lot of instructors who would refuse to work with her. And, you know, I think she was in a monoski and it was falling, and she wanted nothing to do with the bi-ski. So Mindy and I were assigned to her, I think it was in an afternoon, and it was a nice day, and we sort of eased into it and said, you know, we'll go back to the mono if this doesn't work, but let's just try this. And we eased her into it, knowing that it would be better, and I think we actually even told her some fabricated things about it, thinking that, yeah, it's much cooler. It really is a monoski. It's just it has two.
Really
It's
good
yeah, yeah.
Much better memory than I do.
But she actually had a pretty good lesson with us, but we don't know what happened after that.
I know I was exhausted.
We both were, and it was more mentally exhausting than anything, just because she was just so adamant and angry and wanted, you know, she's angry at the world. And look at what happened to her. It was
She was a pilot
yeah.
in the Air Force
Yeah.
and something. But good, you touched on pretty much everything that mentioned there, and with a key on safety. So, anyone want to add anything that wasn't already?
Well, you asked about how that you would guide. It's
Oh.
still it's still all verbal instructions from behind.
But she's saying, would you use the grid?
Did you use the number grid with the,
No.
no, you just
No.
called out, right?
Yeah. Yeah, we called out when to make the turns, because as I recall, she didn't have very much sight at all, right? She
Right.
was almost totally blind. And a grid system is used if you're in a position where she would be able to make the turns whenever she wanted to, based on the fact that there's no one below her and other skiers around, and she well,
These are like conditions we never have here.
correct. Grid is
Pretty much.
rarely used
Yeah.
here unless you're here on a weekday and there's nobody here, and you know.
And it's a
trails
pretty
they
are
have
high-level
some vision.
skier.
Nice, there's even nice trail options.
Right.
I mean, they have to be ready for that.
Yeah,
Like,
that's an
because-
upper level thing for
Yeah.
a skier that has vision loss.
Yeah, I've never done it on a real lesson, personally.
I actually, I'm teaching a course out at Academy this year called Steeps and Peaks for advanced skiers with vision loss on Friday afternoon, the last day. So I just was looking at a lot of videos today, what I could find, there's very few, but I did find a good one from Telluride, and he was using a grid system a lot, but the skier had quite a bit of vision. So it was low vision, but not completely blind.
Okay. Shoot. What do you have, number
Alright.
7?
Yeah. So we have a 70-year-old male. He has skied his entire life and has always been very active, you know, multiple sports, stuff like that. Although about a year ago he had a cerebral vascular accident or stroke, which left him, you know, kind of paralyzed on his right side and also global aphasia. He hasn't skied since the stroke. He walks with a cane. His wife is also a skier and is going to shadow the lesson. And well, Rich came up with a really good idea of like when you introduce him.
Finish your reading there.
He finished the whole description.
Yeah, finish the description, that's their time.
He did finish the description.
Oh, okay.
He did. He just didn't read to demonstrate how you would begin this lesson.
Sorry.
Complete an assessment. Develop a lesson plan.
So Rich was, said that like, when you introduce him, you can immediately assess just how strong his right side is.
Mm-hmm.
Because you usually shake with the right hand, and if he can do it, and how firm his grip is, or if he can really move it.
Mm-hmm.
Also, you like if you introduce yourself, it's like hi, I am like what is your name, and if he can respond, normally you might be able to communicate with him, but if he just responds with something else, you might have to talk to his wife. His wife is actually might be what Rich said, either a very good asset or a very big hindrance, because she might be like worrying kind of wife, or she could be help with the lesson, translate what you guys are saying, or give him because he'll know her ways more, so she'll be able to sort of help communicate and translate what we were trying to get him to do.
If you've ever known anybody with global aphasia, the more you Yeah, so, basically global aphasia is a common, well, I mean, aphasia can be receptive or expressive. So if I have expressive aphasia, things I say to you make complete sense to me, but not so much to you. If I have receptive aphasia, what you say to me makes very little sense, although it obviously makes sense to you. And if I have global aphasia, I have both of those. So, but, if you've been working with a person with it for a long time, or obviously if you're married to them, you sort of do start to figure out what things mean. It almost kind of like another language. I mean, I think you do want to be careful to not complete their sentences or to put thoughts out there that, you know, to say, are you trying to say blah, blah, blah? Because remember, he's, you know, he might not know what you're saying and he'll just agree because he wants to not look dumb, or he wants, or, you know, or he thinks he understands what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? So, I would be slow to make assumptions or to ask if this
Also,
is, are you trying to say this?
Yeah, since he says that he walks with a cane, so he might need an outrigger. And then what he would want to do is, like, you know, take him out in the cricket and just see what he can do. And if he,
So would you start with the outrigger?
yeah, he would start with it because, you know, he has a cane, so you might
Okay.
want to use that, you know, so that he can use it as a cane kind of thing.
Okay.
And then you can kind of like tell, like, you know, from there, like, if he's like still having trouble, he might need a set ski, or he might need some other kind of extra support.
So yeah, I mean, this is definitely somebody that, based on this description, we don't really know how they're gonna ski until we see them move. They could ski any of the methods that we can offer, probably. But yeah, go ahead.
And you also might want to figure out which one is, you know, wanted to come. Like his wife might have been the one who, you know, I know you used to love skiing, so I want you to try this because I heard about it. You know, let's try it. It might be able to help you ski again. Or,
So
you know,
he might be really anxious.
yeah, he might be anxious. Because if he's like, I don't want to do it because, you know, since my stroke, I can't do anything anymore. He might be dying himself. Or he might be the one who's like, I want to ski again. I want to, you know, I heard this thing, or I just want to, you know, I want to get out there again. So his wife might be, you know, kind of weighed and like very overprotective. So that's how she could be the, you know, hindrance. As for like trying to, you know, help him, you might want to like use like physical contact to guide him
Okay.
and to like demonstrate, because he can still see what you're doing, right? He just can't understand things verbally.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you could, you know, you could model what you want him to do
Yep.
and point to him, and, you know, so somehow signal to you, I want you to do the same thing.
He should have, he'll have the muscle memory, he'll remember how to ski. You know, it doesn't say anything about, you know, those kind of, that kind of issue.
Right.
So-
It's gonna be a lot
Yeah.
easier teaching this guy than somebody with
Because
this
he's
description
skied
that
his
never
entire
skied
life,
before.
so
Right.
he should be able
But
to
it
get back
is
to it.
We
gonna-
just don't know how fast we can get him back to where he was.
Right,
if
and
at
it,
all.
and it is gonna feel different to him. I mean, not only is he gonna be weak in his arm, he's probably gonna be weak in his leg.
Yes.
So it's gonna feel different. He may,
And also his endurance, like how long can he last?
sure, absolutely, right, he's probably not gonna go out and
Like if
ski.
he goes one run and is, you know, he's still okay, you know, like he'll do a couple more. If he, you know, after that run, his like legs are just, his, you know, his that side just might be bothering him too much
Mhm.
from the continuing.
He might also, he might not realize how impaired he is. He might not realize that he's not gonna go to the top, you know, as fast as he maybe thought. Who knows? I mean, yeah, this doesn't really say a whole lot about his cognition. And it's one thing that's,
He may push back to, he might say, look, let's go Jericho, I can ski Jericho, but you're gonna have to start right on cricket, because you gotta know
What can he do?
how disabled is it?
right.
I mean, you might be able to assess it all right here. I mean,
Sure.
you should have a pretty good idea what he's gonna be able to do right here. Ask him to twist his foot around, you know, on his right side, you know.
See if he can put it on his boot.
Yeah, see if you can put it on his boot, the whole thing. Might be able to make all the calls in here, but I still would start him on cricket. In the
Absolutely.
terrain-based learning, just with an outrigger, and then start pulling things out as you need to pull them out. because, hey man, he's a 7-year-old skiing his whole life, he might be up there today. But you don't
Also,
know.
with being 70 years old, he might be not see as well or hear as well as he used to be. Yeah, I'm not trying to be no baby or anything.
But yeah, pushing 70 is getting up there.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. And also his body, because he might be kind of frail now.
Yes, it might be very
So,
sad.
and if
70's
he
the
falls-
new 30, my friend.
Well, yeah, but and I've seen a guy.
You're right.
Because how most of you guys know how I went, got my second degree black belt on Saturday. We had a 71-year-old guy there.
The got this too?
Yeah, like he got, I think he's now third degree now. Yeah, he can do it just fine. A little bit, slower, a little bit, weaker, but he can do it nonetheless. So he's still kind of fit.
Mm-hmm.
But some other 7-year-olds may have very weak bodies.
Right. I mean, what we know about this guy is that he has always been active, but absolutely a stroke is going to age somebody, So,
A lot of attributes sitting around.
but we know that he's probably young, minded. So he's gonna, he's
As
probably
most older people are.
right. Especially the point is he's probably going to be motivated. I mean, we did have a guy that, other than the age, fit this description, and I actually wasn't thinking of him when I did this, but he was, I don't know, 40s, David, and he had been a ski patrol at Bosque, I think, and he really, the thing is, he eventually, after a year or two, just said it wasn't something he wanted to continue to do, because it was just, he was never gonna ski the way he had. And it was just, he chose to pursue other things. But
A comment on the skier who wants to go to Jericho or has the high goal, and that that you need to do other things before you get them there. That's a great tool, is to constantly remind them and bring them back to, in order to get to whatever the goal is, we need to do this here, because this is a movement that you would do there, and I need to see that you can do that movement here. So use that as a motivator, and maybe even build in, with the terrain-based learning, is that, look, there's moguls up there, so this is a mogul, just like we might find, let's see if you can use that mogul or that hill, and you can do that with just about any skier that is saying, I want to go up there, and you can let them build the confidence by telling them, in order to get there, you have to go here, and that would be kind of like a contract.
all right, let's do one more. We have about half an hour. Let's do one more, and I'm gonna have actually Renee and Chris go with Shauna this time. And Sue Rich. Let's see. Well, we'll do, I know Sue's not a snowboarder, but you're
It's all just-
you're a second on a snowboard
It's all
lesson
just
now.
sliding.
Let's see. That's too easy.
Hard one.
It's more it's not that hard. You got it.
All right,
Is this
you're
a copy of
assigned to
them all?
a 30-year-old female skier who has skied half of her life. She has mild, moderate
take
cerebral
a-
palsy and skis Fortran.
I just wrote my notes.
Additionally, she is almost totally blind. She can comfortably ski green terrain and has skied blue terrain as well. Her goal is to become as comfortable on blue terrain as she is on green terrain, and to ski black terrain by the end of the season. This is her first time at this mountain. Describe lesson considerations and what you focus on in your first lesson. So Fortran, she uses the
Handheld. Yeah, poles, yes. feel differently with
It does.
muscles?
Yeah, so I wasn't,
So we have to find out.
I wasn't specific about what,
It's not
Type.
usually mental, but it could be speech impairment
could be
as
speech.
well.
Right, it's usually not cognitive though.
Usually not cognitive.
Correct? It might present as such, if, I mean, it might look that way if it's,
Might-
if there's a
might-
speech,
Might look odd because of odd
the speech,
sort of muscle.
right, you can have ataxia where your muscles are, you know,
Which one do you have?
or you
What
could,
number?
or you could have muscle, sometimes it's really just muscle weakness and a low tone, and they're not able to really hold themselves up very well.
Mild to moderate.
So, since I didn't specify, you can make it what you want.
She can do sports, so she must have, you know, it shouldn't be that bad.
So, when she's done, see if she has speech.
That's very simple.
And I don't think that's a habit. But I don't think she's got something.
So on my first lesson with her, I would be very, she's skiing green comfortably. And yeah, and has skiing blue as well, but probably not well, right? She wants to get comfortable. So the first lesson, my concerns with her are,
But she was
are safety, being safe, so that she probably does, I don't know what.
For anyone really?
I'm gonna be very cautious with her, my first lesson.
I wouldn't have
Always
to start
have
out,
to do the, you know.
chicken cricket, you should be able to get my not too well now, I think another.
Yes, yes, I think that we would. So I've never seen her ski before, am I gonna be comfortable with her on the one she?
Probably not, I'd say it's a good cut, maybe take her up to lunch, maybe just ski with the bank.
I would never go to the top, I would start in like. Start on like,
Right.
to see how good she is and how good our communication with her is, which is why.
Well, I skied with her and didn't notice that, but I think I want to do that.
Definitely, at least one run on the 180 to make sure that she can turn, that we are understanding each other clearly. By calling the turns is making sense for her that she can stop. What are we gonna focus on?
Verbal. Gotta be very verbal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Teacher's lesson, you can talk as much as you want.
That's not for me. She's probably doing it as Christine last week, but on Tuesday, but I couldn't.
Point.
Yeah. If not. Oh,
Louder.
oh, we're on camera?
Yeah.
Shut it
This
off
whole
in
time we've been on
between.
camera.
The whole, no, the whole thing is being, I can edit it out, but,
Okay.
yeah.
You have to see what she's doing. She's like.
I have not done very many four-track skiers.
Well, time you do.
Time to do.
Well, have you done sit-down skiers? So with outriggers? Same thing.
Same. She could be a wedge skier.
With the equivalencies, yeah. There's the equivalent to a wedge skier, yes.
I mean, in a four-tracker, again, I think they vary more than any, because they might have almost no use, I shouldn't say no use, but like very little use of their legs, or they could have quite a bit, you know?
Have you skied with David Sussman? So you know how he skis and what the complications are? So then,
I wonder whatever happened to yeah. Yeah. Your first time. Oh, really? I just figured he was skiing other places. Oh,
Good point. Her first time at the map, so
Oh, yeah, so you might
maybe
want to.
definitely start on the 180.
Yeah,
maybe
getting a little bit
couple
ahead of
runs.
myself.
Yeah.
for all. Alan is?
You remember
Oh.
when he needs
You guys ready for
this
this?
a little bit down, but everything
Oh,
You guys,
okay.
are you guys ready?
Okay, okay, yep,
We
yep.
do that
I think so.
Yeah, so just assess her that way and see,
Oh, you had the softball.
see what she's seeing.
And it was perfect. I mean, how great is that, you know, 1 hour snowboard. Make sure we just had that arm in the back, so it's gonna be waiting in front of him. It's gonna be a great snowboarder. Won't be on the right switch very well.
You could probably do it, and you still be under senior.
So we're taking these over to get our pass, is that?
No, no, you're not. No.
Yeah.
You're not taking it to get, no, you have to give it to Carol Filio.
Oh, okay.
Carol has to attach that you went to the orientation.
Oh, okay.
And then it has to get passed on to Sherry. Then Sherry has to pass it down to administration, and they check everything off to make sure that you're completed, and then you get your pass.
All
Sherry
right.
didn't sign mine.
All right.
Sherry didn't sign mine.
Well,
If some,
either Sherry or I will sign it, one or the other.
Neither one of you signed mine. So do we take those back? and
I don't know,
just
she
bring
said
forth
somebody in
first time
HR
we
can
speak?
override.
Yeah, that's what I
Oh,
was gonna
okay.
I don't
ask,
know.
is that-
Or
Did
do
you
we-
take it into HR?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
What was the question?
Do we take those back today and bring them the first time we ski, or do we?
No, no, no.
Oh, you can take them?
Yeah, I left it
And
on
she can
Carol's.
attach 'em.
She's
Okay.
going to
Oh,
send
you're
it down.
meeting with her.
So the
Oh, I see.
next time that you're here, if you
Yep.
go to admin, they should have it.
HR, okay.
Yes. And you make sure that you say it was turned into Carol.
Okay.
You could also do it electronically through the email.
Yes, I sent it to the email and I said,
Yeah.
just, you fill it out and
Haven't done it yet.
send it to Carol, and she will print it on green paper, because that's the big thing, it has to be on green.
Have you had enough time? Yeah. Do you wanna go first?
Okay. You're assigned to a 30-year-old female skier who has skied half of her life. She has mild, moderate cerebral palsy and skis 4-track. Additionally, she's almost totally blind. She can comfortably ski green terrain and has skied blue terrain as well. Her goal is to become comfortable on blue terrain as she's as comfortable on blue as she is on green, and to ski black terrain by the end of the season. But this is her first time at this mountain. Describe lesson considerations and what you would focus on in your first lesson with her. So I would focus on, my main considerations would be safety and communication with her, since she's blind, and fatigue, possible fatigue. So at this mountain, we would start, I think I would probably start on the 180. And make sure that our communication is good and that she has strong linked turns and can stop. And we might do that a couple times, make sure we're comfortable with that, and then we can move on to a blue at the top.
How would you, I know this is gonna be on the question, how would you, when she's met her goal of being as comfortable on blue as she is on green, how would you introduce
The steeps.
the blacks?
So we're both very comfortable now, I'm also comfortable.
Maybe down in the blue square. Maybe introduce her to it down in the blue square.
Yes.
Conditions have to be good, can't be icy, and she's very strong with her turns and she can stop very quickly. We really practice good, strong stops.
Is there anything you could do on blue terrain to prepare her for the black? Other than just, you know,
I think
any specific drills or,
we practice faster turning.
yeah.
What do you mean faster turning?
Well, the blacks are gonna be steeper, so she's going to be going much faster, so she's going to have to be able to turn more quickly.
So
And
turns at
she's not
faster speed to
accustomed
me.
to.
Is that what you mean? Turns at faster
She's
speed?
gonna have to be able to turn more quickly.
A little bit of
when
both,
She is on
right?
blue, right? We're gonna have to be able to do
What controls your speed?
turns, we're gonna have to be able to do big turns, big, well-controlled turns.
Okay, so that would be long
So it would be
radius turns you're talking about? Long radius,
turns,
okay.
Well-controlled long radius turns.
And what do you tend to do on steeper terrain?
Go fast. Fall.
Short radius
Short
turns.
That's right, short radius. Right, that's, why do we do that? Why do we do short radius on
Because what
steep
happens if you do
Control
a
your speed,
long-
control your speed.
Yeah, what
So-
if,
Correct.
if you're doing a long radius turn, what's happening?
You don't feel like you're
You're gaining
going down,
speed.
you're slowing down Yeah.
You're doing a giant slalom. I love it.
A lot of people, not like consciously, but
So I
will
wanted to
do
make sure
short
she-
radius turns on these long traverses,
Yeah.
first time they go on a black, you know? Which
Because-
is not ideal, but
Yeah,
it's
there's-
better than
There's
getting out of
fear.
control. Right.
There's
Yeah.
fear to take that next turn. You know, we have a couple, on this mountain, we have a couple really great places to get your first experience at steep
Foxes.
terrain.
Foxes are easy, that's
The foxes are okay. The best is the bottom of Ace of Spades.
Mm.
Because you have this really steep pitch, but it's very short. You can really get a
And it
feel
has a
for
run out.
And it has a run out. You're gonna run up to the end of the hill there, and you're not gonna go anywhere. So you really, it's a safe environment. You know, you can
And you can
take
get to it from a green.
from a green, and you can get their feel for, okay, how fearful are they gonna be on this
Mhm.
steep terrain? Because it's steep down there. That's a black section for sure, and it's just short, and you can
Mhm.
see how comfortable they are.
And you're right, foxes you can cut in halfway to the
Yeah.
bottom of the fox.
Yeah.
Because they're also
Another
like,
good
it's in
spot.
very good condition, because
Mhm.
snow skis there for some reason, so
Mhm.
it's not very icy there.
Mm-hmm.
It's just nice and, powdered snow. And yeah, there is a kind of steep part, but again, it's not that, not that big.
And we do have some nice steep blues too, like
Yeah.
Panorama and.
North Glade.
North
North
Glade.
Glade is a blue-black, and that's kind of a.
North Glade, you can see the bottom of it, so
Big
it's
and
not
wide.
Yeah.
too intimidating.
Yeah.
But I think you're right though, Shonda, like I think speed, you have to introduce that speed on the blue.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never challenged them on the blue, and if it's always been nice, easy cruising, then it's gonna, when you get to the black, it's gonna be.
That's right, I just need the words faster means short radius turns.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else? Any other thoughts?
How would you be guiding them?
Verbal, maybe some physical contact.
Physical on black and blue? Physical
No,
contact?
No, like when you were
You said verbal.
You said verbal, yeah.
And then maybe some physical, it depends.
What do you mean some physical? Where would you introduce that? Where would you be touching them if they were skiing?
Like on the elbow, sort of just like kind of guiding them
While they're skiing?
a little bit, maybe kind of maybe or something.
Think about
They,
that.
they are visually impaired, so.
Yes, think about that on blue and black terrain. Would you be skiing right next to them, touching them while you're skiing a black
No,
terrain?
no.
Probably not. And if they're on the blue and the black, they should be independent. So verbal
should.
is the answer, you're right. Yeah, yeah.
All right, shoot, number 4.
Scenario 4, you're assigned to a 22-year-old male wounded warrior who has an amputated right arm as a result of injuries sustained in combat. He's diagnosed with PTSD. He's never been on snow before and would like to learn to snowboard. Demonstrate how you would begin this lesson and complete an assessment. Discuss lesson considerations.
I'm not a
Okay. So,
snowboarder.
right.
You very well, if you don't snowboard, could easily get put as a second on a snowboard lesson, so it's all relevant.
So one thing we talked about is we want to get an understanding of what might trigger his emotions, and get him over on cricket and have him lead with his left arm. Let's see. So he's probably gonna be anxious to get up the mountain, so probably use a lot of rewards, like explain, what he needs to accomplish to advance to the next level, to get up to 180. What else did we talk about?
No, I think it was pretty straightforward. He was, he's gonna be aggressive and wanna go, and snowboard to start with is the first time on a snowboard, usually you hit the pavement a lot, so you might wanna set the table that might happen, and you're gonna fall off, but once you get the hang of sliding on the snowboard, you'll progress much faster. And, but just set that expectation, because the PTSD maybe when we ask about it, frustration might bring it out. So, we wanna make sure he's getting frustrated, we take a break or something, But,
So what
yeah.
considerations with an arm amputation would you make?
Well, what I said was, clearly, you know, with snowboarding, you know, you use that forward arm. Early in your snowboarding, you can use your arm almost as a guide. So clearly you don't want the side of the arm missing to be the front arm. Plus you want.
So you would make him take his prosthetic off, or are you assuming that he didn't have a prosthetic?
I'm assuming he didn't have a prosthetic.
Okay, all right.
I mean,
So,
didn't say that, but yeah. If he had a prosthetic and he could use it, then he could ride both ways, I guess. But, you know, there's not really a set, you know, left foot forward, right foot forward because you're a right-handed person, left-handed person. It's really a comfort for anybody, but for him.
do you think that the arm would have any bearing on how he rides a snowboard?
I absolutely think it would. Well,
Why?
if it's not there, it changes your center of gravity towards the one leg versus the other. So if you're just standing in an athletic stance straight up, your center of gravity is shifted a little bit towards the left side.
Enough to make a difference, you think?
I would say
To
so.
make a right-footed person become left-footed, and you make them change their footedness?
No, but what I'm saying is, footedness does not matter which foot you ride forward. A right-footed person doesn't have to have the right foot in the front or the back. You can. I know plenty of people who are right-footed who like to ride with
Goofy,
their
right.
Yeah, I mean it's you can do either one, and certainly with the advantage of the fact that he's missing that weight in that one side, I wouldn't even table it. I would just put him left foot forward right away with his left arm, because it's going to help him a lot better than if you tried. You could, if you were a decent rider. I mean, I'm sure you don't have that weight, but you could force your weight center of gravity up to that other foot.
Mhm.
Well, why bother fighting it if it's really doesn't really matter?
Okay, and then that
which
would leave
footedness
you the
have.
option if you found out that he couldn't make those J turns in the beginning, he couldn't complete it, that you'd still be able to switch and see if the footedness makes a difference. Because that
could.
leaves you that option.
You could.
If-
It's going to have to work a lot harder without the arm up there.
I would disagree with that.
Yeah.
I would think that the arm would not impact, because everything is happening at the feet.
Yeah.
And
well,
I don't think an
Well,
arm
we
weighs
use
as
our
much as a
arms
leg.
to balance. That provides a lot of sensory.
It's you know what, the arm is
And
like.
it depends on where it's
Proprioception.
amputated also. I mean, you know, you're assuming that the entire arm is gone? Who knows? I mean,
Yeah, but I consider the arm in snowboarding like a wedge in skiing. It's a very nice, easy way to make your first turns. You can open that door back this way and that way. It's not a proper turn, but it's a really nice, easy turn when you're first. And it's a lot easier to get rid of the arm in that condition than it is getting rid of the wedge in skiing. You can really quiet the arm. It's always there if you need it, but it's definitely makes nice, easy turns to start with. You know, but it's like a crutch. It's like a wedge in skiing. That's what I consider it. So maybe I'm wrong, but you know.
well,
maybe
yeah,
that's how
I would,
teach it, so.
it's all adaptive. The consideration that I would think of right away is, how's he gonna get up if he doesn't have an arm?
I didn't think about that.
Also, if he falls, how's he gonna?
Yeah, that's what I mean, because a snowboarder is on the ground a lot, on purpose, either on their knees or on their heel side. And, you know, I actually used a scenario once with no arms, and I actually made everybody try and get up without using their
Yeah.
arms at all, and it's
Yeah.
horrendous, you can't.
The mo-
So, one arm you can, if you have one arm you can, but you have to develop really strong core muscles. And it would be much, much easier to get up toe side than heel side. Heel side will be much harder, because you're pushing off one arm and you're gonna start sliding.
It's harder with two arms.
Yeah, it is harder with two arms, so you have to have strong core, and toe side would be easier. And, you know, you're gonna have to have a partner to help pull you up, is what the option
Well,
would be.
especially, yeah. 'cause-
But, Rich, just think about snowboarding and skiing are exactly the same. Everything happens from the lowest point of rotation that you have. It's no different. So it's only the feet that should be tilting, twisting, and pressuring. So that's what you're working with. And if a person is footed, and as you are dominant in your hand, you're also dominant in a foot. Sometimes it's cross-dominant. But if you're footed, that's the foot that you want to be forward. And if it happens to be opposite and the arm is back here, it probably, you know, you could try it, but try both ways. And I've seen so many snowboard lessons that start out and then you just switch them the other way and all of a sudden they can turn. Because the learning curve in snowboarding is very different because you are locked in. You have 2 feet that have to do the same thing as opposed to 2 skis that you can separate to catch your balance. Or in snowboarding, to catch your balance, you end up falling down.
The most amazing lesson I've ever seen in my life was a triple amputee out west. Double AK,
Snowboarding?
yep,
Mhm.
and a single arm amputation. He got whatever big award they give. It was amazing.
How do you ski?
He snowboarded.
Snowboarded.
Snowboarding. There's a guy,
So he had
was on the knee?
2 prosthetics, or was he on his knees?
There's a
He
guy
was on
the knees.
prosthetics.
Prosthetics?
I saw a guy out there on his knees.
Yeah.
Snowboarding.
He's that guy's the guy from England, and he is the most incredible thing you've ever seen because he's so low to the ground, but the problem that he has is getting off the lift. So, because he doesn't have any flexion, he only has the hip, and his little board sticks out like
It
this,
must
so.
jump, right?
Nope, he takes the board off, he puts the board on his hands, and he does a handstand off the lift.
Oh
and
my
rides
God.
with his feet in the air, and then puts the board on his stubbies.
Can we YouTube that guy?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
What's his name?
He's from England,
But
it's the,
snowboarder.
yeah, he's famous because he's a phenomenal snowboarder too, he's phenomenal. But he only has 1 joint, the hip, and he's on little stubbies, it's amazing.
Did we do you? Yes. Okay. I have 2 more, but we have 10 minutes.
Yeah, why don't you, wrap up with a summary or whatever you
I don't have a summary.
got? No?
Any questions? I don't know.
The summary is, any questions, any comments, any concerns?
It'd be great to have a list of favorite videos that we can get online. Like
Favorite
your
videos?
favorite YouTube videos.
Well,
Unless
there
you're on
are
websites
so
somewhere.
many hundreds of them
Or
that
good
any
for us.
topic that you are interested in, you Google that topic. Like I did today, advanced skiers on steep terrain, and I found 2. One, I already had the video. It was the
You mean
Eric one.
visually impaired?
Vision impaired.
You
Did I
only
say-
found 2?
Only 2. So far, but the
Oh.
ones that were valuable. I mean, there's a lot of people that videotape themselves, and this is Johnny and he's doing, but these were 2, good, valuable because they were narrating what was going on, and the other one was the Eric Weinmeier one, which I already have the full length DVD of that, so I didn't need a clip from it. So, but yeah, I mean, you have a specific topic. It's amazing. Like YouTube has thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of topics, and you just, if you want to surf, lay in bed at night with your iPad and just, that's what I do. Watch movies till I fall asleep. Excellent. Would you guys mind filling out one of those clinic forms? Great job, Mindy. Everybody clap. Woo!
It's like,
You guys are over.
it was good.